Hello and welcome to this session for AS26. So this is a standard on intangible assets, and over here the most important areas that the institute tries to touch upon over and above the property plant and equipment standard of AS10 is the section on research and development and the section on amortization. Most of the questions revolve around that. So first of all, what do you mean by intangible assets and what are the items that are covered over here? The general examples that people usually cover are patents, copyrights, trademarks, franchisee rights, etc. Licenses like telecom licenses can be covered. Even goodwill in a way is intangible, but most of the times the purchase goodwill is covered under a separate standard AS14 of amalgamation or AS21 on consolidation. But that is intangible asset. Now what is the crux of an intangible asset? An intangible asset is something which lacks physical substance. It does not have a physical form. You cannot touch, feel and see. So for something to be an intangible, that is the first and the foremost criteria, but not the only one. Like even a bank balance, you cannot touch, feel, see. Like cash, you can touch, feel, see. Bank balance, you cannot touch, feel, see. So merely lacking physical form does not make an asset an intangible one. Second is that it has to be non-monetary in nature. Now what is monetary, non-monetary? You do it at a lot of length in foreign exchange, AS11. However, just for the purpose of this standard, monetary would mean assets which have a determinable monetary value, like a bank balance. If it is 22,222, you are going to get exactly that, not a penny more, not a penny less. So that is a fixed monetary value. But when you have a patent can give you future economic benefits, but you cannot contractually fix or determine how much is the money value of the benefits. Can be very high, can be low, can be average, we don't know. So there is no contractually fixed or determinable monetary value, and hence these items that we just mentioned sometimes like patent, copyright, trademark, etc., all of these will be non-monetary in nature. To be covered under intangibles, it has to be non-monetary. And third is it has to be identifiable. Identifiability means you can separate out and sell it separately, capable of being sold separately, or it is a license or a right which is granted. Like for example, Maruti might have a market share which is 40% in India. However, Maruti cannot separate out and sell just the market share. Further, that market share is not given as a separate license, and market share cannot appear in the balance sheet separately because it is not identifiable. However, when you look at a patent, let's say Elder Pharma has a patent to manufacture Crocin along with 50 other patents. If it wants, it can separate out and sell the patent separately if it wants. Or let's say Bharti Airtel might have a license, a telecom license for a certain 5G, 4G network, in which case I may or may not be able to sell it separately. However, it is a license or a right granted by the government, and as a result, this can be shown as a separate intangible. So for something to be shown as an intangible, it has to meet three criteria. First, it has to be identifiable. Second, non-monetary and lacking physical substance. That is when it becomes an intangible. But merely because it is an intangible, does it necessarily appear in the balance sheet? Well, it should be something which is controlled by the entity and is capable of giving future economic benefits. Like you might do research expenses. You are trying to find a solution for HIV/AIDS. You are trying to do research, but you are not very sure whether you will reach the molecule which can kill the HIV/AIDS virus, and hence you are not very sure whether these expenses that you are incurring will give you future economic benefits or not, in which case I cannot capitalize it. For something to be capitalized, it should be capable of giving future economic benefits. And third, and the most important thing over here in my opinion, is the cost should be measurable reliably. A lot of internally generated assets, you can't, like a brand name that an entity determines, you can't determine the value or you can't determine the amount that you have spent to create that. Like Sony has a brand name, but for Sony internally, how much money it would have spent to create the brand Sony, it's very difficult to reliably estimate. And as a result, unless the cost is reliably determinable, we should not be recording. So for the purchased assets, I will know exactly how much I've paid. For the self-constructed assets or self-generated assets, in case I exactly know how much money has been spent and I can measure it reliably, I can show it. But for most of the internally generated brands, even internally generated goodwill, etc., you cannot really determine how much was the exact money spent for generating this. And as a result, standards believe that if you can't measure something reliably, rather than showing a wrong number, do not show any number. And hence, for you to show the intangible in the balance sheet, apart from meeting the general criteria of intangible, it should be capable of giving future economic benefits, controlled by the entity, and the cost should be measured reliably. Only then will the intangible asset reach the balance sheet. Now, a few special cases at this stage that you need to know is, what do you do for deferred revenue expenses? Like a large advertisement campaign is done in the current year, ads have been displayed, you think the benefit will be received over the next 3 years. AS26 says you cannot show it as an intangible asset, you cannot defer it over 3 years. There is no concept of deferred revenue expenditure at CA Inter, AS26 or CA Final. What was there in CA Foundation, you should skip that. That was for partnership, sole proprietor. But if a company is following accounting standards, you have to follow accrual system, and accrual says record expenses as and when they are incurred. That is, when the ads are displayed, you will show that expense. Or you do a big training that may upskill your employees, however you will record it as an expense when the training is done. Or you incur preliminary expenses, you record it when the expenses are incurred. You cannot capitalize it as an intangible asset because it does not meet the identifiability criteria. You can't just separate and sell it separately, and it does not give you any license or right. And hence, an important point is deferred revenue expenditure at the end of the day should be expensed to the P&L, should be recorded in the profit and loss account, and cannot be spread over the 3 or 4 years that you were doing earlier. Second, sometimes what happens for internally generated assets, well, I cannot measure the cost reliably, and hence if cost is not reliably measurable, I will not record it separately. Human resources, remember, are not controlled by the entity. You can't own a human resource, and hence human resource cannot be shown as an asset, let alone tangible, intangible. They cannot be shown as an asset in general. Okay, next, when you go to intangible, so this is just a basic introduction of intangibles. The accounting treatment of intangible by and large is similar to what you study for PP, like initial recognition for an intangible will still be at cost, that is purchase price plus non-refundable, non-creditable taxes plus directly attributable expenses, everything is the same. Further, special cases like a barter is still the same. You will record it if it has commercial substance at the fair value of the asset given up. If not available, then the fair value of the asset received, and if not available, at the WDV. If it lacks commercial substance, then directly at the WDV. If there's a payment which is deferred at or beyond 12 months, again you will do the cash price equivalent or present value and do the working exactly the same as PP. If there is subsequent expenditure, second section, in case of an intangible, the treatment is exactly the same. If that subsequent expenditure increases the life or efficiency beyond the originally assessed, then you will capitalize, like you are extending the life of an intangible asset like a license, or you are covering more area, more states under a license that increases life or efficiency, should be capitalized. But in all other cases, regular maintenance expense of the license, regular routine audit or report should be submitted, will be taken to the P&L account. Same. Subsequent valuation over here is a little different, where in PP you had subsequent valuation using cost as well as revaluation model. Usually under intangible assets we don't have the revaluation model, we will do the accounting generally using the cost model only. If you want to apply revaluation model, there are very strict and stringent criteria that the fair value should come from an active market. Usually patents, copyrights, trademarks don't have a market where they trade. So basically from a student standpoint, you can safely assume that an intangible asset should be recorded using the cost model only, that is cost less accumulated amortization. What is depreciation in case of a PP is basically amortization in case of an intangible, and we'll do a separate section for discussion of intangibles. So I would say that the accounting treatment for PP as well as intangibles is by and large similar, except for two main areas which the institute focuses on asking questions over here. First is research and development, where they give you separate guidance. Earlier there was a separate standard AS8 on research and development, which is now merged with AS26. So research and development has two facets. First is a research phase. What do you mean by research phase? Expenses which are incurred during the research phase should be expensed to P&L. But what is the research phase? This is the ideation phase. That is, you have an idea to find a cure for HIV/AIDS. You have not yet found the cure, you just have an idea, in which case expenses incurred during the research phase are expensed to P&L because future economic benefits are not certain. On the other hand, what is development phase? Once research reaches a particular outcome which is feasible, then I can, merely because I find a molecule which can cure the HIV/AIDS does not mean that I can start giving that medicine to the people from the very first day. Now a long development phase starts, where you will figure out whether I need to give it as an injection, as a syrup, or as a tablet. You will try to figure out whether there are any side effects, do some trials. All of this is happening during the development phase. Still take up legal approvals till the time your product is available for commercial use. That is a development phase. So what do you do with the expenditure in the development phase? Now it is quite likely that you are going to get future economic benefits, and if it is likely that you are going to get future economic benefits, ideally you should capitalize, provided four conditions are satisfied. First, the product should be technically viable, so you should have the inputs, capacity, capability to make such a product. Second, should be legally permissible, something where you think that the government will give you the approval if you want to go ahead. Third, financially feasible, the product should have a market where people are going to buy that product, and last, cost should be measurable. So if these four conditions are satisfied, then that is when we will capitalize the expenditure which is incurred during the development phase. If any of these conditions is not satisfied, then even during the development phase the expenditure will be taken to the P&L. Once the intangible asset is ready for use, like AstraZeneca made the COVID shield vaccine, it did some research. Once it found a molecule, it did a lot of testing. That is the development phase. The moment the development phase is over and you start administering the vaccines to the public at large, that is when development phase kind of stops. You will capitalize expenditures incurred during the development phase till the time the asset is ready for use. Okay, research is the ideation phase. Development phase starts when the research phase ends. Development phase ends when the asset is available for commercial or overall use. Okay, so this is regarding research and development. Next we have amortization. Now amortization for an intangible is what depreciation is for a tangible. So when you're looking at amortization, you will amortize intangibles with a finite or a definite useful life. Like for example, a license has a 5-year life. Then you will amortize it over the 5 years. That may be the overall life. You think that the benefits are over 3 years, and you will spread over 3 years. Basically, you spread over the finite life. On what basis? A systematic basis, if that is available. Systematic basis can be based on the pattern of benefits that I get, which is usually based on the cash flows. So if nothing is available, the estimated cash flows that I can generate from utilizing is a very good source for determining the benefits. However, if the pattern of benefits is not reliably determinable, then you can use a straight line basis. So over here, amortization on a systematic basis, and if there's no systematic basis, then no straight line basis. Now this can work for intangibles with a finite life, but what if an intangible has an indefinite life? Like for example, when I look at Tata acquiring Jaguar, it pays for the brand name Jaguar. Now that trademark of Jaguar or the brand name stays with Tata not for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, it stays for an indefinite period, and hence if the useful life cannot be reliably determined, then AS26 tells you that you will take a 10-year life. If you cannot reliably determine a useful life, you will take a 10-year life and you will amortize over a 10-year life unless a longer life can be justified. So whether an intangible has a finite or an indefinite life, if you want to take it for a period beyond 10 years, you need to show evidence on the fact that the life of the asset will be beyond 10 years, otherwise you will have to amortize it over a maximum 10-year period. So again, systematic basis are available or straight line over 10 years for indefinite life. Even for finite life, it is 10 years or actual life, whichever is shorter. If you want to claim a life longer than 10 years, it's a 10-year limit unless proven otherwise. You will have to show evidence. Like a license is for 15 years and you believe that you will get benefits over 15 years, in which case you can amortize it over 15 years. You will have to show evidence of a life being greater than 10 years. So there can be a hidden adjustment to kind of write it off over 10 years. You have not yet, you might have probably not done this, but when you do a separate standard on amalgamation, AS14 tells you similar logic for goodwill. It says goodwill has an indefinite life. So on amalgamation, goodwill is supposed to have a maximum life of 5 years unless a longer life can be justified, and hence goodwill under AS14 will be amortized, let us say, over a 5-year period. Intangibles under AS26 will be amortized over the finite life or the useful life as a case may be, or 10 years. Generally, whichever is shorter. If you want a longer than 10-year life, then you need to show evidence on why the life is greater than 10 years. Okay. Subsequent change in the useful life, well, that is the same as AS10. It is treated as a change in accounting estimate, will be given effect to prospectively. Now there is another section which you will do in AS28, which is on impairment. There is a section of recoverable value. Now what happens over here is we look at inventory. For inventories we compare cost or NRV, whichever is lower. In a similar way, for tangible assets or intangible assets, you can compare the carrying value of the asset with something called as the recoverable value. AS28 will teach you how to calculate recoverable value. Among other things, it is usually calculated as a present value of future cash flows. So you will predict the future cash flows, try to find the present value, and that will give you the recoverable value, because an intangible can be used, and if it is used, what is the cash flows that are generated? Present value of that will be the amount that can be recovered from using the intangible asset. So if your asset is appearing at 100, whereas the recoverable value is only 80, in which case there is a possible write-off for 20 rupees, because an asset is defined as a resource which is capable of giving future economic benefits. So if you are showing the world that the intangible is worth 100 and it can recover in today's terms only 80, the 20 excess will never be recovered, and hence you will write it off to the profit and loss account. Sir, when will we know that we have to do this adjustment? Only if information is given pertaining to recoverable value. If that information like estimated cash flows, discount factors, etc. is not given, you don't have to compare with the recoverable value, because practically when you study AS28, you will be taught that this comparison between the carrying value and recoverable value will only be done if the indicators are existing, and hence it is not necessary that every year the indicators exist. How will we know as a student? Well, if the question gives you data regarding estimated cash flows along with discount rate and asks you to find the carrying value, you will calculate the carrying value, that is a WDV or the ledger balance, and compare it with the recoverable value based on the present value of future cash flows. And if there is an impairment, that is the carrying value is greater, say 100, as compared to recoverable value, that is 80, you will put a 20 rupees impairment, though you will study impairment at a lot of length when you do AS28. Okay, so this is we have mentioned the detailed provisions over here are covered by AS28. So this is by and large what pertains to the intangible assets standard. Now, when you look at this chapter, there are quite a few questions. We'll discuss these questions and special emphasis on these questions which are important from a last day revision perspective. Though we will discuss all the questions which are there, there may be some questions which are connected with some other standards which you may not have done. We'll discuss it at brief to give you a general understanding. So over here, question 1 we'll do in some time. Let's go to question number 2 first. A company had spent 45 lakhs for publicity and research expenses. Publicity, selling and distribution. Research expenses, well, you usually expense it to the P&L for one of its new consumer products which was marketed in the accounting year 15-16 but proved to be a failure. So there will be no future economic benefits coming from here. How will you deal with the following matters in the books of you for the year ended 31st March 17? Well, you will take the entire 45 lakhs to the profit and loss account. Future economic benefits are not certain. It's a research. In any case, selling and distribution publicity expense should go to the P&L. End of story. Question number 2. Next, you go to question number 3. A company with a turnover of 250 crores and an annual advertising budget of 2 crores had taken up marketing of a new product. It has estimated that the company would have a turnover of 25 crores from the new product. So we have done quite a bit of advertising, which we believe is going to give us 25 crores revenue. The company had debited to its P&L the expenditure of 2 crores incurred on extensive special initial advertising for the product. Is the procedure adopted by the company correct? Well, yes. Remember, advertisement expenses should be recorded as when ads are displayed. So if ads have been displayed, you will record it to the P&L. You don't need to spread it over the future years in such a case. So this is question number 3. Next is question number 4. AV launched a project for producing product X in October 9. The company incurred 20 lakhs towards research and development expense up to 31st March 11. Due to prevailing market conditions, the management has come to conclusion that the product cannot be manufactured and sold in the market for the next 10 years, which means there does not seem to be a market for this product, at least currently. The management hence wants to defer the expenditure to write off to the future years. Is that appropriate? No. You can capitalize development expenditure. Research has to go to the P&L, but you can capitalize the development expenditure only if, among other things, the product has a market. In this case, it does not appear to have a market. It is like saying that you try to think about an idea of a driverless car way back in 1980s or 70s. In that case, in that stage, you did not have the technology enough, but we thought that around 10-20 years later we'll get the technology, but today you don't have that technology. So whatever money you have spent does not have a future economic benefit. Where should it go, sir? It will go to the P&L account. So the entire 20 lakhs will be taken to the profit and loss account. Okay, then you have question number 5. This is on amortization. An enterprise acquired a patent right for 400. Product life cycle is 5 years, and the amortization is in the ratio of estimated future cash flows. That is the pattern of benefits. So you will take that. So this is 200, 200, 200, 100, and 100. After the 3rd year, it was ascertained that the patent would have an estimated balance future life of 3 years. After 3 years, it should ideally have only 2 years remaining, but you are reassessing the life. And the estimated cash flow after the 5th year is estimated to be 50 lakhs. Determine the amortization under AS 26. So over here, if I total all of this is what I think 800. In the first 3 years, there is no change, and hence for the first 3 years in each of the year, this is 400 into 200 upon 800 will come to, let us say, 100. And as a result, at year 3, you would have 400 minus, you would have 100, 100 and 100, 300 already written off, and hence your ledger balance would be 100. Now this 100 will be spread over the next 3 years in the ratio of 1 is to 1 is to 0.5. So basically 50 lakhs are expected. So 1 is to 1 is to 0.5. So 100 divided by, I think, 250 into 100 comes to, I think, 40 of amortization, 40 of amortization, and then 20 of amortization. So this is, if you go to see, 20, and the other 2 years 40 and 40. So that takes care of question 5. A more complex question similar to this we have put for LDR at the behind. 6 and 7 are broadly similar, so we have put 7 for LDR. So we'll first try to touch upon, let us say, 7 and then come to 6. So let's say we go to 7. NDA Corporation is engaged in the research on a new process design for its product. It has incurred an expenditure of 530 lakhs in 31st March 11. So this is the total expenditure. The development of the process began on 1st April 11, and the development phase expenditure was 360 lakhs up to 31st March 12. Okay, when did the development phase begin? Sir, 1st April 11, which means every expenditure before that would be qualified as expenditure during the research phase, and that expenditure of 530 should go to the P&L. Now, development phase began on 1st April 11 and it was 360 lakhs up to 31st March 12. So, ideally, if conditions which meets the asset recognition criteria, so conditions are met, you will capitalize it as an asset. From 1st April 12, the company will implement new process which will result in after tax saving of 80 lakhs per annum for the next 5 years. So it becomes ready for use on 1st April 2012. So expenditure till 31st March 11, research expense will go to the P&L. Expenditure during the year 11-12, 360 is an intangible asset under development, will be capitalized. From 1st April 12, amortization will start because the asset is ready for use, and it will generate an equal benefit of 80 lakhs over the next 5 years. Cost of capital for the company is 10%, so this will help me in calculating the recoverable value because the cost of capital or discount rate is given. You are required to find the accounting treatment for the research expense. We will say P&L account, 530 lakhs in the year 10-11. Cost of internally generated intangible assets as per AS 26, well, this will be 360 lakhs to be recorded as on 31st March 2012. And the amount of amortization of the assets, the present value annuity factor of 1 rupee for 5 years is 3.7908. So ideally we would have said 360 is the cost. However, we need to compare the cost of the intangible, that is 360, with the recoverable value. Recoverable value is 80 into the present value of the future cash flows, 3.7908. 80 into 3.7908 comes to approximately 303.26, which means there would be an impairment loss. If I go to see, there would be an impairment loss of around 56.74. This will be going in the P&L account, for example, in the year when you are doing the impairment, maybe in the year 11-12. So this is 56.74. So now the revised carrying value of this intangible will come to 303.24. So if I have to do amortization, it is 303.24, which will be amortized over 6 years. So over here, this will be divided by 6 into 1 comes to around 505, or sorry, equals to 50.44 per annum. So over here in question number 7, you have the amortization as well, and for amortization you will have to book the impairment. Otherwise students would say 360 divided by 6. No, that is wrong. We will have to take the ledger balance, which is 303, and then divided by 6. Now if you do question number 7, I think question 6 should be a sail through. We'll quickly discuss this. Plymouth is engaged in research on a new process. It has incurred 10 lakhs as research cost during the first 5 months. This will go to the P&L. The development of the process began on 1st September. And up to 31st March, a sum of 8 lakhs was incurred as development phase expenditure, which is 8 lakhs to be capitalized. On 1st April 13, the company implemented a new process, and it is likely that it will result in an after-tax savings of 2 lakhs for the next 5 years, and you have been given the 10% factor is 3.7908. So this is 2 into 3.7908. 2 into 3.7908 will probably come to 7.58. So this is 7.58. Decide the treatment of research and development cost as per AS 26. So we will say research cost will go to the P&L to the extent of 10 lakhs. Development cost, you will put an asset of 8 compared with 7.58. There will be an impairment of 0.42, and hence the intangible asset will be shown at 7.58. 0.42 will be taken to the P&L as impairment loss. So this is 0.42 impairment loss. If you do 7, I think 6 can be easily tackled. Next, you go to question number 8. Again, this is an LDR question because it covers foreign exchange as well, which is AS 11. As per AS 11, you will record the asset at the exchange rate as on the date of the transaction. Remember that. A company acquired for internal use a software on 20th January from USA for $1 lakh. The exchange rate was 52 rupees per dollar, and the seller allowed a trade discount of 5%, which means 95,000 is the purchase price, but that is in dollars, into rupees 52 per dollar. 95,000 into 52, and it comes to 49 lakh 40,000. Import duty of 20%. Will you add? Yes, assuming it is non-creditable. Purchase tax of 10%. Will you add? Yes, assuming it is non-creditable. So over here you will add to this import duty, and hence, okay, so just a second. So 4940 into 20%, 9,88,000 you will add. Now the problem is purchase tax will also be added assuming it is non-creditable, but what will be the base for purchase tax? Now you can take the base for purchase tax, the invoice value, or you can even take invoice value plus import duty. That is what the institute has taken. So over here this is into 10% and comes to 5,92,800, though an alternative assumption is possible over here. Entry tax of 5% is recoverable from the tax department, so this will not be added to the cost because it is creditable. Installation expenses will be added because this is directly attributable, and hence this will be added. and professional fees for clearing from customers. So this will also be added, considering it to be directly attributable. So over here you will take what? All of this, and your total comes to 65 lakh, 65,800. This will be your total cost, 65,800. Next is question number 9. Base Limited is showing an intangible asset for 85 lakhs. Somehow he has calculated this value on 1st April 11. This asset was acquired on 112 lakhs on 1st April 2008. Okay. And the same was available for use from that date. So amortization will start. The company has been following a policy of amortizing the intangible over a period of 12 years on a straight line basis. Now the thing is, can you amortize it over 12 years? If there is any evidence of the life going beyond 10 years, then you can go for 12 years. Otherwise, you will have to restrict it up to 10 years only. That is what the institute has done. However, if you can write a note and say that we assume that there is evidence to show that the life is 12 years, then you can very well amortize it over 12 years. Comment on the accounting treatment of the above with reference to the relevant accounting standards. So as per ICAI, what they have done over here is they have said that the life cannot exceed 10 years unless the question gives you specific information of any evidence. So in this case, since the evidence is not there, we will say that 112 divided by 10, that is 11.2 should be the depreciation for the year 8-9, for the year 9-10, as well as for the year 10-11. 3 years have gone by, and hence 11.2 into 3, that is 33.6 should have been the accumulated amortization. So 112 minus 33.6, and you will get what? You will probably get 78.4. So ideally your intangible should appear at 78.4, but it is appearing somehow at 85, and hence the difference between the two, that is 78.4 minus 85, that comes to approximately 6.6, will be expensed in the current year. The question is not asking you to pass any entry. In question 1, such an entry is asked. This is as per accounting standard 5, AS5. We are saying that there is an error on our part, that we have done a mistake of taking 10 instead of 12. It is not an estimate or a judgment. It is as per a standard requirement, and hence you will have to make certain adjustments as per AS5 over here. So we will say that we have just been told to comment. So we will say that your intangible in your books, instead of 85, we will do a 6.6 adjustment, and it will come down to 78.4 in your books. Out of this 6.6, we can say 11.2 should be the current year's amortization, and the other 24 or 22 point something 4 should be the amortization of the earlier years. Okay, so over here this is 78.4. Now question number 1 builds on this, and it asks you to pass a journal entry. So if we go to question number 1, ABC developed know-how by incurring an expenditure of 20 lakhs. Great. Know-how is an intangible asset. The know-how was used by the company from 1st April 9. The useful life of the asset is 10 years from the year of commencement of the use. Perfect. Even if it is not given, if the question remains silent, we can say intangible has to be amortized. If nothing is available for indefinite asset life, we will take 10 years. Here it is given as 10 years, so we will take that. The company has not amortized the asset till 31st March 16. This is a clear-cut case of an error. It's a mistake, it's an omission. Till 31st March 16, you acquired the asset in 2009, today it is 2016, that is 7 long years. So it has not amortized for 6 past years as well as 1 current 7th year as well. Past journal entries to give effect to the value of know-how as per AS26 for the year 31st March 16. Now, if the last years have been finalized, I can't do anything over there. However, in the current year, I can make certain adjustments. So I can say that over here, ideally 20 का asset है divided by 10 into 7 years, that is 14 का amortization should be charged. Out of this 14, we can say this is 2 per annum into 6 years, that is 12, pertains to the past 6 years, whereas 2 into 1, that is the 7th year, that is the year 15-16, pertains to the current year. So over here, if I have to pass the adjusting entry, I will credit the intangible by 14. Intangible asset will be credited by 14. Typically P&L has to be debited by 14, but out of that 14 we are saying 12 pertains to expenses of the earlier years, and hence show it as a prior period expense of 12, and 2 pertains to the current year. So this is how your entry will appear. So this is a good blend of AS5 as well as AS26, and hence we can mark it as important because there are more than one standards getting hit over here. Acha, next you go to question number 10. Now this is interesting, where you have to select an appropriate method of amortization. Now usually we select amortization on a systematic basis, if that is not available on a straight line basis. But what if 2 systematic bases are available, like you have units of production and you have cash flows? Remember, your pattern of benefits are more reliably determined based on the cash flows that the asset gives me more than the units of production. Again, if cash flows were not given, we could have taken units of production, but if cash flows and units of production both are given, a slightly more appropriate base, at least as per ICI, is a cash flow method. Okay, refer question number 10. Hira Limited got a license to manufacture particular medicine for 10 years at a license fee of 200 lakhs. Now, if nothing is given, 200 divided by 10, 20 should be the amortization each year. Given below is the pattern of expected production and expected operating cash flows. Between the two, this more reliably determines the pattern of benefits, and hence the amortization is more appropriately done based on the expected cash flows. So, you have this, if expected cash flow data was not given, then I would have taken production to be a better proxy. But if this is given, we will take the pattern of cash flows. So over here, the net operating cash flows has increased from the third year because of better inventory management and handling methods such as the amortization method. Well, this is based on the pattern of cash flows. That is, you will take, for example, 9:18:23:32:32 and so on. So this 200 lakhs will be amortized in the ratio of the pattern of benefits, and it is an additional working. You can even show the amortization per annum. Okay, next you go to question number 11. Mahesh is developing a new production process. Now during the financial year 31st March 13. Now this is also similar, I would say, to a great extent with question number 6, 7, 11 are broadly similar. 11 has slight different variation here. Even there will be some subsequent expenditure. So Messrs. Mahesh is developing a new production process. During the year ended 31st March 13, the total expenditure incurred on the process was 60 lakhs. Okay, this was during the year 31st March 13. The production process met the criteria for recognition as an intangible asset on 1st December 12. Expenditure incurred till this date was 32 lakhs. So this will be expenditure incurred during the research phase, and hence it will be going to the P&L because this is till 1st December 12. After 1st December 12, later expenditure of 60 minus 32, that is equal to 28, must be during the development phase, and hence it should be capitalized. Further expenditure incurred on the process for the year 31st March 14 was 90 lakhs. Now this is one of the very few questions where the development expenditure is also continuing. It is possible that your asset continues to be under development even in the next year. It is continuing in the next year as well. As on 31st March 14, the recoverable amount of know-how embodied in the process is 82 lakhs. This includes estimate of future cash flows and inflows both. So over here, recoverable value is given. In question 6 and 7, you had to calculate the recoverable value. Here it is given. And this is recoverable values on which date? 31st March 2014. So you will compare the carrying value with the recoverable value on 31st March 14. You are required to work out the expenditure to be charged to the P&L for the year ended 31st March 13. Well, this will be 32 lakhs in the form of research. What is the carrying amount of the intangible on 31st March 13? This will be 28. There will be no amortization because the asset is not ready for use. There is no impairment because you don't have a recoverable value on 31st March 13. What is the expenditure to be charged to the P&L for the year ended 31st March 14? Now, on 31st March 14, what happens? You will look at the intangible asset for which you initially had spent 28 rupees and you further spend 90 rupees. This 90 rupees will be capitalized because it is towards developing the intangible asset during the development phase, and hence this comes to probably 118. Now I will have to compare this with the recoverable value, which is 82, and hence if I take the difference over here, 118 minus 82, and I will get 36. 36 is the impairment, and where does impairment or a write-off go? Well, it goes to the P&L account. So the expenditure to be charged is 36 in the form of impairment. In the next year, there is no further research, there is no amortization as well, because in the year 13-14, the asset is still not ready for use, at least during the year. What is the carrying amount of the intangible as on 31st March 14? Well, it was ideally 118, from which 36 is to be subtracted, and hence 82 will be the carrying value. So this is pertaining to question number 11. Now 12 is a very good question. I will mark it as important. Quite a few good adjustments over here. So let us review this. Naresh Limited had the following transactions during the year 1920. Okay. At the end, हमें करना क्या? If you go to see, prepare a schedule showing intangible assets section in Naresh's balance sheet as on 31st March 2020. So you will have to show the section of intangibles. Naresh acquired running business of Sunil for 10 lakh 80 on 15th May. The fair value of Sunil's net assets was 5 lakh 16. So for something which is worth 5 lakh 16, you ended up paying 10 lakh 80. So there must be goodwill. Naresh is of the view that due to popularity of Sunil's product, its goodwill exists. So what is the goodwill amount? Let's say 10 lakh 80 minus 5 lakh 16, and this probably comes to 564. Okay. So this is 564 for the goodwill. Nourish had taken a franchise in July 19 to operate a restaurant from Sankalp Limited for 1,80,000. So this is the initial cost to acquire the license, and an annual fee of 10% of the net revenues after deducting expenditure. So this is like a royalty that you have to pay. Jitna revenues ka 10% is to be paid. Now the question is, if I have to calculate the cost of the franchisee rights, I will take the directly attributable expenses linked to acquisition. So 1,80,000 is linked to acquisition, but the 10% of annual fees is linked to operation. So if you operate very well, get huge revenues, you pay 10% of that. If you do not operate as well, get next to nil revenues, you don't pay any. So that 10% is linked to operation and not linked to acquisition, and initial recognition will be based on the directly attributable expenses linked to acquisition. So this 10% of the revenues, if any, will go to the P&L. The franchise expires after 6 years. Net revenue was 60,000 during the financial year 1920. Perfect. So over here, when we are going to see, we will say that the franchisee right will be recorded at 180. Let's say everything is in thousands. 60 into 10%, that is 6,000, will go to the P&L. 60 of revenue will also go to the P&L. 10% of that royalty expense, other expenses will also be recorded in the P&L. On 20th August, Nourish incurred a cost of 2,40,000 to register the patent of its product. This is initial expenses to register. Should be capitalized. Nourish expects the patent's life to be 8 years. अच्छा, ऊपर franchise का कुछ life दिया था. Franchise to operate restaurant for an annual fee. Franchise expires in 6 years. So यहाँ पे 6 year का life दिया, which is less than 10 years. यहाँ पे 8 year का life दिया, which is less than 10 years. For goodwill, there is no separate life given. We will see what is to be done. Okay, so this 2,40,000 should be capitalized. Answer is yes. Ajay, if the question tells you that these are expenses to maintain, protect the patent, like you register it in your name, later someone infringes the patent and you put a lawsuit on them, you pay some legal expenses. That is an expense to maintain, protect your patent, and hence that will be taken to the P&L. But this is an expense to register the patent, will be capitalized. Nourish follows an accounting policy to amortize all intangible assets on a straight line basis over the maximum period permitted by the accounting standard, taking a full year amortization in the year of acquisition. In my opinion, this is wrong. You have to take amortization pro rata basis, which means if something is acquired in July, amortization will be from July to March. If something is acquired in August, from that date. But if the question specifically tells you that your amortization is to be done for a full year basis, Institute has done it on a full year basis. If they had asked you whether this policy was appropriate, we would have said no, this is not appropriate. But if it is given, we will solve it according to the data required. Goodwill of the business to be amortized over 5 years as per AS 14. So like 10 years is a limit under AS 26. 5 years is the limit for goodwill under AS 14. Prepare a schedule. So over here, I have to do amortization. So basically, I will say that what are my intangible assets? Well, my first intangible asset is goodwill, and goodwill I have recorded at 564, but I will have to do amortization. 564 divided by 5 into 1. Ideally, it should be prorated, but because the question very clearly tells you that prorating is not going to happen, then you will find 451.2. Second is franchisee right. Now in franchisee, we will take 1,80,000 minus 1,80,000 divided by 6. Again, full year's amortization. This will come to, I think, 150. And last is that patent. So if I take the patent, this is 240 minus 240 divided by 8. That is again 30. I think 210. And hence, if I total up the intangibles, 451.2, 150 and 210, it comes to, I think, 811.2, which is the answer over here. Okay, next you go to question number 13. Swift Limited acquired a patent at a cost of 80 lakhs for a period of 5 years. Okay, so this is for a period of 5 years, and the product life cycle is also 5 years. So you will amortize it over 5 years. This is a good question on amortization. We put this question for LDR for your amortization. The company capitalized the cost and started amortizing the asset at 10 lakhs per annum. How it is calculated, we don't know, but it is given that it is at 10 lakhs per annum. So each year, if it is 80 lakhs, minus 10 lakhs, minus 10 lakhs, minus 10 lakhs. Okay. The company had amortized the patent at 10 lakhs per annum in the first 2 years. So it went from 80 minus 10 minus 10. It must have come to 60 right now. Okay, sir. 6 more years are remaining. On the basis of economic benefits derived from the product manufactured under the patent. So that is fine. It is based on the pattern of benefits. After 2 years, it was found that the product life cycle may continue for another 5 years from then. Acha, total product life cycle was 5 years only, out of which 2 years have gone by. So 3 years were remaining. We are saying no, not 3 years. It will continue for another 5 years from then. The patent was renewable and Swift got it renewed after the expiry of 5 years. Nothing is given regarding renewal cost and hence we have not done this. Otherwise, we could have capitalized it because it is directly attributable to increasing your life. The net cash flows for the product during these 5 years, that is the 5 years after the first 2 years, were expected to be 36, 46, 44, 40, 34. Find out the amortization cost of the patent for each of the years. So from years 1 and 2, it is very easy, it is 10 lakhs. But when you go to year 3 would be, if I total, year 3 would ideally be 60 which is remaining into 36 divided by what? So I will add 36, 46, 44, 40 and 34. I think if I add all of these, that is my total estimated cash flows. This will come to, let us say, 200. So let's say this is 36 by 200, which will come to, let's say, comes to probably 10.8. Further, when you go to year 4, again this is 60 into 46 into 200. So this is, I think, 13.8. Year 5, this is 60 into 44 by 200. So this is, I think, 13.2 and so on. So if you go to see 10 in the first year, 10.8, 13.8, 13.2 and so on. So this is regarding amortization if there is a change in estimated life and even the estimated pattern of cash flows. Next you go to question number 14. This is regarding finding the expenditure during research as well as development phase when different phases are given. During the year 11-12, an enterprise incurred cost to develop and produce a routine low risk computer software product as follows. So you have all of these costs which are given. If you go to the next page, they say after completion of phase 2, it is established that the product is technically feasible. So till phase 2, it was not technically feasible. After completion of phase 2, it is technically feasible, which means the expenditure incurred during phase 1 and phase 2 has to be expensed because till that time there was no technical feasibility. You are required to state how the referred cost is to be recognized in the books of accounts. So till phase 2, whatever is the expenditure will go to the P&L as research cost. So over here phase 1, this is research cost, will go to the P&L. After phase 2 development starts, so this is also research cost, will go to the P&L. Now expenditure after phase 2 will be on development, let us say. So 90,000 will be the research cost, will be taken to the P&L. Other coding cost 3 and 4, testing cost 3 and 4. Well, this seems to be during the development phase. This is development phase, this is development phase. Now the next point is a little tricky. Product masters for training materials, which is phase 5. What is a product master? Product master, as per institute, is the first version of the product that you are making. So when AstraZeneca was developing the COVID shield vaccine, the first final vaccine that they made, all the expenditure that goes behind that product master will be capitalized. The moment you make it, after that you can make thousands and millions of bottles of vaccine based on that patent that you own, and that is inventory for you. Okay, but if there is an expenditure for the product master, as per ICAI solution, someone says this is for training materials. It is like the user guide that you get in different languages. Well, this is to be kind of capitalized because it is incurred for the product master. We kind of believe that making a training material is necessary to get the product in the ready to use condition, and hence as per ICAI, this can have a subjective interpretation, but as per ICAI you will capitalize it. And then packaging of the products, 1500 units. Now this packaging of the product can be taken along with inventory because this is the products that you are holding for sale, or if it is not held for the purpose of sale, then you will expense it to the P&L account. You will not show it as a part of intangible. The intangible is now fully developed. It is like Windows, developing a Windows 95 software. After that, it puts it on the CD and sells it to different people. Now that is in the nature of inventory if it is holding for sale, but if the software is ready, your capitalization stops. And hence if I go to see 63, 18, 19.5, maybe 1 lakh, 500 will be the development cost and 16,500 goes to the P&L. So if I go to see over 16,500 should be taken to the P&L, 1,05,000 should be capitalized at software cost, and 90,000 will be shown as an expense. Okay. Next you go to question number 15. As per AS 26, how would you deal with the following situations? 23 lakhs paid by manufacturing company to a legal advisor for defending the patent of a product is treated as a capital expenditure. That is wrong. Remember, if it is for registering the product in your patent in your name, you can capitalize. But now this is like maintenance. Someone is infringing your patent. To protect your patent, you are incurring expense that is not directly attributable to acquisition, and hence this has to be expensed to the P&L account. During the year 21-22, a company spent 7 lakhs for publicity and research expenses for one of its new products, which was marketed in the same accounting year but proved to be a failure. This is similar to question number 2. This will be taken to the P&L because there are no future economic benefits. In any case, it is research and there is publicity, which is sales and distribution. A company spent 25 lakhs in the past 3 years to develop a product. These expenses were charged to P&L since they did not meet the AS26 criteria for capitalization. That is right. Maybe you are trying to do some research, and hence in that period it should go to the P&L. In the current year, approval for the concerned authority has been received. So now maybe the intangible can be used. The company wishes to capitalize 25 lakhs by disclosing it as a prior period item. Is that correct? No. As per AS5, you cannot do that because it is not an error in the last years. In the earlier years, when you were incurring this expense of all the way up to 25 lakhs, you did not know that I will get future economic benefits, and hence you correctly took it in the P&L account, and hence now once you get the approval, you cannot retrospectively go back and change what has happened in the past. It should have gone to the P&L, it has gone to the P&L, no change can be made. A company with a turnover of 200 crores and an annual advertising budget of 50 lakhs had taken up marketing of a new product. It was estimated company would have a turnover of 20 crores from the new product. The company debited it to the P&L account. Total expenditure of 50 lakhs incurred on extensive special initial advertisement. Is that correct? This is similar to question 3 if I am not wrong. This is correct. It should take it to the P&L account. Well, it has been taken to the P&L account only. Okay, so this is question number 15, and next we have question number 16. The last question over here. X Limited had carried on business of manufacturing bakery products like a Britannia bread or a Wibbs bread, etc. The company had 2 trademarks, Sun and Surya. 1 month before, the company knows through one of its marketing managers that both trademarks have allegedly been infringed by other competitors engaged in the same field. So they are using your product's name and trying to sell products. It is infringement. After investigation, legal department of the company informed that they had a weak case on the trademark Sun and strong case regarding trademark Surya. X incurred additional legal fees to stop infringement of both the trademarks. Both trademarks have a remaining life of 10 years. How should X account for the legal cost for the 2 trademarks? Now, whether you are likely to win or whether you are likely to lose, these are costs which are incurred in order to protect your trademarks and not to acquire the trademarks, and hence for both the trademarks, whatever is the legal cost incurred will be expensed to the P&L account. So if you go to see, such legal cost must be recognized as an expense in the P&L. Okay, perfect. I think that should be it. That should take care of your AS26. These are your questions, all of them, and a few questions for important last day revision. I hope this has been helpful. I'll see you soon with another standard. Till then, keep studying well and goodbye.